Okay, for this second lab presentation, I'm going to go over the anatomy of the forearm and hand. So first, I'm going to start off by drawing the two bones of the forearm. I'm going to draw them from my point of view, and then I can switch it and show you afterwards. Okay. So it's not the best drawing, but it's what I can do. So first we're gonna start off with uh, this this structure right here. This structure is called the Olcranen process. Okay, and then right below that, so probably right around here, um, it's called the trochlear notch. And then there's a little indent kind of right here. And that would be called the ulnar tuberosity. So this bone is the ulna and this bone is the radius. Okay, next at the very bottom, we have the styloid process of the ulna. Okay, and then moving on to the radius, this very top portion right here is the head of the radius. Um, and then next, there's another little indent kind of right around here, and that is the radial tuberosity. And then lastly, at the very bottom of the radius, right here, we have the styloid process of the radius. For the next portion, I'm just going to go over the muscles of the forearm, their innervation, and which arteries supply blood to them. Okay, first we're going to start with the carpi ulnaris. Obviously connects to the ulna right here, and it acts to extend and adduct at the wrist. It's innervated by the ulnar nerve. Okay, next we have the carpi radialis right here. Carpi radialis, it acts to flex and abduct the hand, and it's innervated by the median nerve. Okay. Next we're going to go over the palmaris longus right here. So it's this long muscle right here, right in the middle. It acts to provides flexion at the wrist, and it's innervated by the median nerve as well. Okay. Lastly, for the superficial forearm of the anterior forearm, should have mentioned that first. We have the protonator teres. It's this one in the green. And it's responsible for protonation of the forearm, and it is also innervated by the median nerve. Okay. Next, we're gonna go over the deep portion of the anterior forearm. Okay, and every muscle in the deep anterior forearm is supplied blood throughout the through the ulnar artery. Okay, so the first one is the flexor digitorum superficialis. It's right here at your wrist, and it is responsible for flexion, and it is innervated by both the ulnar and median nerve. Okay. The last muscle of the deep anterior forearm is the pollicis longus. Is this green one right here, runs across radius and ulna, and it is also responsible for flexion, and although it is innervated by the median nerve. Okay, so moving on to the posterior forearm, within the superficial section, the first muscle being the brachioradialis muscle right here, and it is responsible for flexion at the elbow, and it's innervated by the radial nerve and supply blood through the radial artery. Okay, the last muscle of the superficial posterior forearm is the extensor carpi radialis brevis. So it's this tiny green one right here. And the brevis is responsible for the extension at the wrist. It's innervated by the radial nerve and supplied blood through the ulnar artery. Okay, and lastly, there's the extensor carpi radialis longus. It's this one. It's the most outermost one, and it is responsible for the abduction to the wrist. And it is also innervated by the radial nerve and supplied blood through the ulnar artery. Okay, so moving on from the forearm to the hand, we're going to talk about the bones of the hand. And I pre-drew this during the transition for like time management wise. So there's 8 total bones of the hand in the middle hand. The first one is this tiny one right here, and that is known as the triquetrum or triquetrum. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing certain words. The next bone is right underneath of it, and that is the lunate bone. The third bone is the scaphoid, and that connects to the radius right here. This is the radius, and that's the ulna, 4 fingers and the thumb. The fourth one is the trapezium right here, that connects to the thumb. The next one is right above the triquetrum. It's a circular one right here that is the pisiform. Okay, next we have the hamate bone. Hamate bone. And then to the right of that is the capitate, and the last bone is the trapezoid bone. Now, I created a little mnemonic for this in the order of the scaphoid, lunate, triquetrum, pisiform, hamate, capitate, trapezoid, trapezium bone. And that's she likes to plant herbs, casually tasting them. Just the best I could come up with there. So after discussing the bones in the hand, we're going to move on to the muscles of the hand. And unlike the forearm, the hand does not have compartments. Instead, there are 4 muscle groups. Okay. The first muscle group is known as the sanar group, and there's these 3 muscles within it. There's the opponens pollicis, and that is responsible for opposing the thumb, and it's innervated by the median nerve. The next muscle is the abductor pollicis brevis, right here, this blue one. That is responsible for the abduction of the thumb, and it is also innervated by the median nerve. And the last muscle of the thenar group is the flexor pollicis brevis, right here, this red one. And that is responsible for the flexion of the MCP joint of the thumb, and that is innervated by both the median and ulnar nerve. The second muscle group of the hand is known as the hypothenar group. The first muscle we have in there is the opponent's digit minimi, and that is responsible for the rotation the metacarpal of the little finger towards the palm. And then next we have and that's innervated by the ulnar nerve. The next muscle we have is the abductor digiti minimi right here next to it. And that is responsible for the abduction of the little finger. Okay, and then lastly, toward this group, we have the flexor digiti minimi brevis, right here, and that is responsible for the flexion of the MCP of the little finger, and all of these are innervated by the ulnar nerve. Okay, the third muscle group we have is the lumbrical muscle group, and there's 4 muscles here, and they're just noted by Roman numerals. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, they are responsible for the flexion of the MCP joints, and then the others are they extend the IP joints of each finger. Okay, and these are innervated by both the median and ulnar nerves. Okay, the last muscle group is the interossi. There's basically the dorsal muscles and the palmar muscles. These are the dorsal interossi muscles, and they're responsible for the abduction of the fingers at the MCP joint, innervated from the ulnar nerve. Okay, and these ones right here are the palmar interossi muscles, and they're responsible for the adduction of the fingers at the MCP joint, and they are also innervated by the ulnar nerve. Okay, for the last part of this presentation, I'm going to go over a case study. So there was a South Indian cadaver, about 60 years old, and during a routine dissection for undergraduate medical students, there was an abnormal muscle found in the anterior compartment of the left forearm. It was unilateral, and it was about 5 inches and had 2 tendons at its 2 ends. The tendon of origin and the tendon of insertion. The tendon of origin, it was attached to the anterior surface of the radius with the radial origin of the FDS muscle, and the fleshy part of the muscle and the long tendon of insertion crossed superficial to the median nerve from lateral to the medial side. The tendon was partly inserted to the deeper surface of the flexor retinaculum, and then it flattened out and merged with the undersurface of the palmar aponeurosis, I think is what it's called. And the long tendon of insertion was passing through the carpal tunnel as it entered the palm from the forearm. And then the muscle was deriving its innervation by a branch of the median nerve.